And it looks like we are live from the Digital Pedagogy Lab Institute from Fredericksburg, Virginia. I'm Ken Bauer. I'll be your virtual buddy here today for Virtually Connecting. Why don't I go straight to the on-site folks so they can introduce themselves, and let's have a short conversation because they have to get back to their sessions.
Can you start, Chris?
I'm Chris Gilliard.
I'm Sara Goldrick-Rab.
Hi, George Station.
I'm Brittany Brown-O'Donnell.
And Daniel Lyons back here.
Excellent. I think we'll skip kind of the on-site or the off-site introductions because we're tight on time. Why don't you let us know what's going on-site there?
Okay.
What's the buzz?
Okay, so this morning we got started at 8:39 at 9 o'clock with intros from Sean Michael Morris and Jesse Stommel. Kind of let us know how the week was going to progress and so on. Sean actually gave a very touching statement, which I'm not sure if they captured on video or not. That was basically reminding us of how inclusive we need to be in these times. And we went into a little bit of detail on that I think was very moving. Actually, he just reminded us of why we're here, which is that our universities need to be reminded that they should also be welcome spaces. Chris, you want to add anything?
Oh, that was great.
I'm pretty sure Sean will have it recorded. He recorded both of the keynotes. So I'm looking forward to seeing all the message there.
And then we kind of broke into our individual tracks at that point. So I think we each have some adventures going on there. I guess I should say one thing for you that I think Becky might want to chime in on if I get this wrong. There is she's a
Mexican historian. She's a professor who teaches women's Mexican history.
Yeah.
And wants to know or meet more people in Mexico.
Yeah. So we immediately both thought of you, and I think Becky called your name out first. We immediately thought of you as she was describing, and we were doing intros. And this was in the networks track with Kate Bowles and Maha.
Wonderful. I'm looking forward to it. I'm not Mexican, but I've been here for 20 years, so I'm kind of a duck.
You would have colleagues.
But you have colleagues, and
you're not a woman either.
Yeah,
what's that?
But
no, thank you. Thank you. I'd love to put them in touch with people here.
Connectivism at its best, actually, is what's going on here, right? So our scholarship is expanding exponentially just by being here and participating with folks in the track today. So, and I'll just add for the networks track. Let's see, we started with the more critical and not digital and not pedagogy just yet. We started with some reflective self-storytelling. Kate drew on her background, her narrative therapist, even though we weren't doing therapy, but it got us to start telling some smaller but yet very important stories in our lives that we're going to build on during the week. And we're going to bring in, of course, the digital and so on as the week progresses.
Wonderful. And yourself, Sara? Look, great to see you there.
Good to see you. I have not been to a track. I'm keynoting this afternoon, although I did have some interaction last night, starting with the very important introduction to Hazel, which is what I was really looking for, if I can be very honest. Connecting with the next generation and getting to see what has transpired since Jesse's move from the escape from Wisconsin to the open air here in Virginia.
And what are we looking for your keynote?
Hint about what some teasers for your keynote?
Teasers for my keynote? I think a lot of people know that I'm spending a lot of time these days working with some of the most vulnerable people in higher education, our students who have gone unnoticed, who are going to extraordinary measures to try to get a college education right now, going homeless or hungry. Area of my work that's new. It's an area that is probably the most challenging for me, and it's work that I'm building out. So I'm going to be trying to get folks to think about what it means to incorporate real learning experiences, given that the conditions for learning have not entirely been met for these folks, and what practices and policies we might push for and support and put in place ourselves. One of the reasons I wasn't in the track this morning, my syllabus for Temple University is nearing completion, finally. The students keep asking me for it, and to be honest, I didn't spend any time teaching during my first year on site. So I was trying to complete my syllabus, and the last thing I did on my syllabus was add a section to the policies about basic needs security. I was typing in the disability policy and the accommodations, et cetera, and then I thought, I can add a section. I'm allowed, I think, to add a section of my own. And so I said, if you're having any difficulty securing your food or your housing while you're attending class, first of all, please contact the Dean of Students, because I know there are resources there, and I went personally to make sure that if I sent students there, that there would be resources. But second of all, please tell me, because I may be able to activate supports for you that you might not necessarily know about. So it was a first, and I'm kind of dying to see what's going to happen.
That's important.
Yeah.
And
as I think Chris and I may have the same question here, but as a lecturer, I was wondering, as every lecturer watching right now, if that is something that you'd be willing to share with us.
I'd be happy to share it.
Adaptation.
I don't know if my language is right. You know what I mean? Certainly. Yeah. I mean, in fact, it's a class for graduate students, and so I didn't struggle too much with calling it, I said securing your food or housing. If I was talking to undergraduates, we've learned that they don't necessarily know what that is. So if I was to do it for them, I might change the language to something like, do you have difficulty paying for groceries, or making sure that you eat every day, or having a safe, secure place to sleep at night? Like, I might go further in that. But yeah, I mean, I'm happy to share it. I'm really curious about what as a researcher, I want some data on what the feedback is going to be before I feel like I did it right. But I know that I had a Twitter conversation about this. I was remembering that I had a Twitter conversation a while ago about doing this, and then I was sitting there this morning going, okay, first Jesse would hate the syllabus because it's like not creative at all, and it's got lots of text, and it's 9 pages, and then I thought, well, I can make it better. Let me add a statement. Anyway.
Oh, Jim says they're prohibited from adding anything like that in the syllabus.
Wow.
Oh my gosh.
Depends on the campus.
Why?
Yeah.
Can you not just add your own page?
I was gonna say.
Jim, what's the deal with that? Do we have audio?
Yeah, we had a bit of a battle, and we've totally lost it. It's administration and academic leadership, they're just all obsessed with, we're community college, and they're obsessed with what they think is HLC requirements and, transfer requirements and all this other stuff. And they've paid for a system to control it. And, it's a standard thing. You've got 1 or 2% of profs that have never really done much of anything with their syllabus at all, and just garbage. So they lock down everything for everybody, even to the point where we have to use the syllabus in this system called Concourse Syllabus, which is kind of it's a 2008, if you can imagine doing it in a 2004 WordPress that hasn't been updated since. It's just ugly. No one wants to read it. And a handful of us who actually have done syllabi elsewhere, and I mean, I was willing to compromise and say, okay, I'll make you your concourse copy so you can administratively check it, and I'll just give them my copy. It looks good, and I will make sure that the text is in sync and stuff. And we were prohibited from doing any other version and using the word syllabus. So
outline.
Yeah.
Because they want to check everybody's syllabus, that everybody has exactly the same learning outcomes. And yeah, it's going to backfire on them, because what's going to happen is a handful of faculty, well, maybe more than a handful, particularly if I come up with a nice little WordPress template for folks, are going to start doing things that we're going to call first day hand. Well, I can't call it first day handout because it's an online course, you know, but I'm going to call it, you know, like intro pages. And students are going to learn real quick to read that because it's interesting and exciting and tells you what you need. And they're actually going to learn in some classes not to read the syllabus.
And cut the part out of the recording.
It's so interesting to me.
They'll never see this.
Yeah, nobody at my school will see this.
Yeah. I've been at 2 public institutions, both of which have a lot of state influence. And at the first one, outcomes would even be on a syllabus was not required. I mean, in other words, nobody ever looked at a syllabus in the 12 years I was at Madison and said, there's like parts here that might need to be there. And nobody ever made sure that I had a statement about disability or plagiarism or anything else. First thing when I was told when I came to Temple was that when I made my syllabus, I needed to submit it to a person who would look at it to make sure I had the right things on it. When I sent it over to her, she said, you have none of the things that you're supposed to have. That's totally me. And then she sent me back text. And my problem with the text was, number one, there were sections that repeated multiple times. So like, it didn't make sense. There were things where it said, here's an example, and then there was no example, right? I mean, so she said, well, no, you just need to like have those general sections. So I got to change the all caps do not plagiarize to like a definition of plagiarism. But I mean, there's certainly room. I mean, who knows? Maybe I broke a rule too. I don't know. But I think we're in different structural positions.
Yeah,
your point is well taken.
It's not going to last because like my syllabi fails the audit routinely, and they audit every single syllabus. And it fails it because I don't have the table. I just have a link to a Google spreadsheet that has the schedule. And they won't, it has to know that the schedule has to be in the concourse syllabus, but I'm telling them, you know, it doesn't handle tables well in an accessible manner. So yeah, there's going to be conflicts.
Yeah. I guess it's still something you could say to students on the first, during a first session. There's probably other ways to convey it, but it isn't the same as putting it on the syllabus, I would say, where there's other sort of standardized information.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's interesting that we're starting our conversation about this kind of contractual nature for learning and how that's so framed, and the rigor involved has to do with the contract in the beginning. It really is an eye-opener, I think, for students into the world that they're entering into, and it shuts them up, quite frankly. That's what it does in many ways. And I think there's ways in which we could resist that in what we do in the classroom as we present these kind of institutionalized documents, perhaps talking around them and situating them within a broader learning space that we are designing and creating, that we have more obvious control of in the interactions that unfold. So I kind of, there's a lot of side chat going on here in our conversation here about that. But I think it's the spirit of the week and the Institute as well, is to think about this together, and the work that we can do to push back on these institutionalized forms of contractual learning and the expectations involved, and then the assumptions as well involved, and where students are coming from, what they know or don't know about their own rights and their own, their ability to access things or not within institutions. All of this the tone is set with that syllabus in the beginning as a contract. And I think it's actually pretty instructive that we're talking about it in a deeper dive here in this short conversation, because it's a sort of, it's a sign of the kinds of things that we're interested in talking about in the Institute as well.
I think you're right, and I think that one of the things that not being allowed to do it gets in the way of is establishing a sense of caring towards the students. I mean, that's what I'm trying to convey with that, is that I don't like them. They don't know me yet. They only know my online presence, if they know that at all. And I want them to know that I think of the class as a family, and adding something like that, it's a way of signaling that. If I weren't allowed to do so, they're getting in the way of my approach to my students.
Yeah, and let me just add the absurdity of thinking of the syllabus as a contract, right? If you talk to any lawyer, they'll
Yeah.
laugh in your face.
Yeah.
I mean, and to build on what Sarah said, I mean, the idea of thinking of something as a contract versus, you know, I mean, who do you have contracts with, right? I don't have contracts with, like, my daughter, you know.
Right.
No, I mean, like, not where I sign and she signs, right?
Yeah.
And then I come back later and tell her how she didn't fulfill the requirements of it, right? But that's what we do to our students, right?
Yeah.
You laugh, but that's what we do to our students.
Well,
it's ridiculous.
Well, except that it's not really a contract, because a contract requires the two parties,
Exactly.
and there's only one party providing that syllabus.
Yeah.
The
Well, and it
are
speaks to the
showing
power
up.
dynamic,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Students
I
are
gave you
showing
this
up.
contract, student. Now
Yeah.
you have to live up to it, and I don't have to do anything.
Yeah. So it really doesn't
Yeah.
hold up. There's a paper that I'll drop the link to later this afternoon when we're done with the session. I'll drop it into the ditch bed.
If you drop me any more links, George, I'm going to have to take a week off.
Well, it's for
But
you.
I was thinking about what you guys were saying about, like, a syllabus is so much about what an institution needs in order to award credit, and so little about what a student needs in order to learn. And I feel like that model, like, we build everything. I'm just seeing even our, like, retention efforts are built on this idea of, like, what does the institution need to retain its students, as if retention of students is not connected to, like, what students need in order to learn. And it seems like we frame all of our initiatives, you know, from that institutional standpoint, and all of our sort of regulation of teaching comes from that institutional standpoint and not from the view of the students. And I think just putting those basic needs inventories sort of on the syllabus like that is so dramatic of a shift, because it really says, like, so yes, those things would affect retention, for example, right? But what it really starts with is, what do you need, you know, in order to come into the classroom, right? What do you need? And I wish that more of our initiatives were focused on asking students what they need rather than what the institution needs in order to, like, satisfy its customers. It's like this backward logic, and you spend all of this energy and the wasted resource, like, Jim, of what you were talking about you guys contracting with this ed tech company to purchase, you know, like, syllabus regulating software, whatever. Like, how much money are we expending because we're thinking in institutional terms to solve a problem that is really related to student learning? And it seems like if we started with students, we could actually do both things, right? We could build healthy revenue streams for our institutions, but you'd be starting with the people that you're actually trying to serve. It seems so backwards to me.
No, I agree with you. And there's two parts. I mean, one, you're absolutely right. Food and housing security is absolutely related to retention. But the other thing that's related to retention that we know, and this is increasingly noticed among first-generation students who are also among our graduate students, right, who are the first time to experience graduate level coursework in their family, that the framing of caring, the framing of interdependence between learners is actually conducive to retention. And so there's multiple things that can be achieved there. I suspect that universities, I don't know, think of the syllabi as a legal entity, a legal agreement, and not a retention tool, right? And that might be the mistake. Because if you just go to basic comms, and I keep thinking, like, how much we don't know about communication and how universities do their work. If you just go to basic comms, this is sort of the first thing that you put in front of a student, right? It's the first document they're looking for. It sends a very powerful signal. They don't know that the university is thinking about legalities and such.
But interestingly, that's what, I'm not on the screen, sorry. I always thought of my syllabus as my contract to the students, in that this is the service so, like, I lay out my grading scheme, for example, and I'm accountable to that, which means that I can't change it on them, right? Like, so I'm giving them something as it's to let them know what they're buying into, and I'm making an agreement
So it's what I'm agreeing to them, I guess, as opposed to like.
I think, but I would suggest that that is not the usual. I mean, I mean, my institution made the mistake of actually asking me to come on the first day of the faculty academy and talk to incoming faculty about this. Is going to be, do you consider the syllabus a contract? I don't think, you know, I only have anecdotal evidence, but I don't think that people are thinking about it in the way you are, as in students, but they're thinking of it as in, this is what, you know, this is what I'm going to hold them to in a legalistic kind of framework.
So I'm just going to jump in over here. Even for those of us who do have agency about how we construct our courses, design them, syllabi, I see a lot of sort of policy creep, and I feel like it's almost like these are defensive syllabi, stemming from our worst experiences or our worst fears or our worst assumptions about students, you know, whether it's cell phone use or attendance or nonsense like that. But you know, Robin, who's on this call, and I, when we push for open pedagogy, we think about sort of how we can incorporate more or build the course to enable students to have more agency in the construction of the course. So we're not just prescribing learning outcomes for the entire course as if the course is not going to be shaped by the students, for example. So I love this notion of you know, thinking about the syllabus differently, structuring it so that it's supportive. It's almost an illustration of your teaching philosophy and the climate that they will walk into. But in the little bit of time we have, I'm just wondering if beyond the wonderful suggestion that Sara started with, there are more structural elements for the course where we can sort of implement our thoughts about digital redlining, for example, Chris, or indeed food insecurity, Sara. Not just in terms of, you know, what resources we're assigning, but even in terms of the assumptions about how much time do our students have to work on assignments when they're working as much as they are, for example.
Yeah, that's a whole other thing that I think about that every time I obviously list how many readings I have, given that I study how students spend their time and know how much constraint there is. And I didn't think about trying to find a way to, and I don't know where I would put sort of an explicit acknowledgement that you may or may not be able to do it, because I would be worried sort of going to these other conversations about signaling that, oh, you don't have to do all that reading, when I think the reading is really important. I don't want to put the reading over the childcare responsibilities, right, or anything else. So, yeah.
Reality versus Carnegie units.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I actually even worried at being in a new school, just interpreting what the norm is. I don't know how much reading they normally give, you know, but I don't know why I care either, frankly. I mean, it's amazing to me that given the incredible privilege that I have as a professor, basically untouchable with a wonderful union, that I'm still wondering, like, am I in compliance with these whatever things that weren't spelled out to me? Do you know what I mean? Like, how strong are these norms that I would even think about that stuff?
Right.
But,
I know you're pressed up on time. How are you doing there? Do you need to close on site?
Do you want to give a question to someone who's virtual there or something for one of these three wonderful people? Or
Wonderful. Anyone want to jump in? Maybe Akesha or Stephen or anyone else?
I mean, the only thing I would add is that I know for accreditation purposes, what you put in your syllabus that's why they're reviewed. And a lot of classes, a lot of places will collect them, review them. One of the purposes has to do with when it goes before accreditation every 2 years or however often, depending on which accreditation agency your school goes through. Getting back into that legal conversation about what exactly are you requiring of your students and how does it connect with your overall program.
And I mean, I agree with you. That's part of what's happening, but I also want to say that that's just a sign of more things that are wrong with accreditation. The syllabus can tell you the actual, you know, practices that are going on in the institution is so laughable, right? I mean, I get that it's like class, and we would all not welcome the intrusion that would come if they actually tried to do it in a meaningful way. But there are so many ways in which accreditation has failed students for so long, and I just think that, you know, you're right, that's the status quo, but that's also abysmal.
Wonderful. Anyone else have something to jump in on?
Yeah, write that next book. Yeah, that's sort of Trusty's book, I gotta say. That's a story about the for-profits.
I just want to hear what Chris is getting ready to do in his sessions at DigPed.
Well, you know, I'm just gonna give you a taste, but I, you know, for people who don't know, I'm doing the probably half keynote on Friday along with Maha. The fact that the contract issue came up in terms of thinking about our relationship with students is interesting, and you know what I've become really interested in is how we take all these failed models of other businesses into pedagogy. Right, so like, oh, we need an Uber for education. We need a contract for our students, right? We need, you know, like Netflix for. No, you don't. Like, let's do something else, because like those things don't even work that well for the industries in which they are made. So, yeah, banking model, exactly. So that's kind of what my keynote is going to be about.
Wonderful. And you, George, what would you like to add before you sign out with your on-site?
There's your title.
What was that?
Robin said pedagogy loves failed business models.
That's tweet worthy. I'm sorry. That is definitely tweet worthy.
Dude, I'm just repeating you. You actually said that. So it was brilliant.
Wonderful. Well, I want to thank Sarah, George, and Chris there, and I know Becky's in the background, and I saw Remy jump in, and Brittany and Dan for their time today.
Thank you. Thanks everyone.
Later.
Enjoy the event. And we can stay online, everyone here. And I'd like everyone to introduce themselves, since I wanted to skip over it because there wasn't a lot of on-site time. I'm going to mute the on-site. Oh, they're still there. I muted you, sorry. Keisha, why don't you introduce yourself, since you're new here, and we'd like to make sure we introduce the new folks.
My name is Keisha Horton. I'm a learning architect and administrative faculty at Air University. Though I'm not representing them right now, I'm just attending just to find out more about what you all do. I specifically work in the East School of Graduate and Professional Military Education. So I design and develop online courses. I teach the orientation courses, and I support faculty in developing courses.
Wonderful. Thanks for joining us, being a first-time VC. I don't know, what do we call the people that are online? We have their buddies, we have the on-site buddies, participants. Thanks for joining. And why don't I go, I'm going left to right on my screen here, and so Anne-Catherine.
Yeah, sure. Hi, my name is Anne-Catherine. I'm from Germany, and I'm with the Center for Higher Education, and there I work in a national initiative dealing with digitalization at universities. And what I specifically do is, right now we're setting up a process in which we counsel universities in developing strategies for the digital age for teaching and learning.
Excellent. Chuck's coming up with the idea for, what do we call the participants? So I'll let Chuck introduce himself here.
No, I think Jim came up with the idea. I'll let him suggest it. But hi, I'm Chuck Pearson, Associate Professor of Natural Sciences, Tusculum College, freshman experience instructor, chemistry, physics, guru, lab type stuff, geek at large. I don't know what else you want to call me.
Excellent. Thanks, Chuck, as always. And Jim, you're muted, bud.
Oh, me?
Yeah, you.
Oh, I guess mine are in a different order. You took me by surprise.
Yeah, they go in a different order for each person.
Okay, I'm Jim Luke. I'm econ prof on the Twitters and elsewhere, and I call it. They didn't give me a title because it's not their official initiative, but so I call myself the chief instigator of the Open Learning Lab at Lansing Community College, and I still teach about half of my load on economics. So that's it. And what Chuck referred to is, I was thinking maybe we should call V Connecting Peeps. So we have the on-site and remote buddies, and then the peeps. I don't know.
Sounds interesting.
Except that it could get kind of confusing at Easter.
I need to think about that. Mia?
Hi guys, so I'm Mia Zamora, and right now I'm in Norway. I'm here for a year with a Fulbright grant. I'm teaching digital culture is the department I'm in, and I teach electronic literature, among other things. And usually I'm at Kane University, which is in New Jersey, where I teach literature and writing. And I love VC and all of my friends in VC.
Sorry about that. I was so enchanted, I forgot about I was next. Rajiv Jangiani, I'm a university teaching fellow in open studies and a psychology instructor at Kwantlen Polytechnic University here in the Vancouver, Canada area. And I'm also the open education advisor with BC Campus. But yeah, together with Robin and Jim, and I guess everybody else, Chuck as well, constantly pushing at the edges of trying to push the boundaries of open educational practices.
Wonderful. Always good to hear from you, Rajiv. And Robin?
I'm Robin DeRosa. I am at Plymouth State University, part of the University System of New Hampshire. I'm back in my office today because it's August. That's all I got.
Yeah, that's all you got. And Stephen?
Hi, everybody. Stephen Bishop. I am in Vancouver, British Columbia. I'm at home because it's a holiday today. And I love that term, learning architect. I think I'm going to start using that as my designation because I have multiple roles at Douglas College, and I work with instructors helping them to design courses, but I also am creating curriculum for a series of courses that have to do with building, energy management and sustainability and green building and things like that. So I'm absorbing all this talk about syllabi today, and I'm going to try to use it right away.
Wonderful. You. I can't remember if I introduced myself. I'm Ken Bauer, Associate Professor of Computing Science here in Guadalajara, Mexico at the Tec de Monterrey. So basically what we do after the show is the post-show. Anyone who wants to jump in and keep commenting. We can pretty much go open mic as well. You don't have to keep yourself muted.
I've got a question I'd like to throw out, especially to the folks here, is there seems to be an enormous amount of energy on the syllabus issues. And I know it's something that because of things happening, obviously, at our school, and the fact that for 6 years, I was the faculty member responsible for accreditation with HLC or as liaison. So I've really delved into it. It's a complex issue, really, but we need a place to discuss this more, to keep going on it, because I think it falls into too much stuff that we do too often, which is where we just, those of us pushing the boundaries, we gripe and complain and we nip at, what's not good about it. But if we're going to get any real change, we've got to build replacement. We've got to give positive direction on what you do instead. So, but I don't know how we hold that dialogue.
I think there's some of us that can push the boundaries easily, and we have that privilege. I don't have tenure, but those that do, that's a different, and I think Robin's talked about that before. But I feel secure enough to be able to do things differently, and others don't.
Thinking about, my university, we have to submit our syllabus, and it has to have these 20 policy things, which are written like total crap. Like Sara said, a lot of them don't really make sense. And so I just put all those in, and they have to basically be in paper form, meaning, they can't be a web.
So they can scan it. Did we lose Robin?
But the actual syllabus is that, but then it sort of balloons out of that. And the architectures around that, I think, really in some ways subvert those pieces that are required as they get built out and annotated. And that's a live website where I'm just throwing everything, almost in a Google Doc model. And I'd be curious to know for how many people that's the case, where there's like a, here's how I satisfy the requirements, and here's what's really happening. And it seems like if that's the case, there's a sort of subversive potential in that, and also sort of a really conservative, problematic thing where you're allowing that work to only happen in the privileged margins. So I'm starting to rethink that and wonder if I should maybe, you know, use the position that I have and whatever else to sort of force that larger document, you know, but usually my syllabus is done at the end of the semester, and at that point nobody wants to collect that thing, right? But that's the actual syllabus of the course. Anyway.
Jump in, people. But I think we need to push. Yeah, those of us that can.
Yeah, we need to push, but we also need to think and talk about this a lot more, because I know the one thing that struck me when we were having this battle over syllabi that I've kind of referenced on campus, is the syllabus has become, it originally was this real simple document. I remember when I was undergraduate, just after Aristotle had retired, and the syllabus was this real simple document about, you know, well, this is what we're going to do in the class this year or this term. And it was professor to students. And it still fills that function, but it's now become this Swiss Army knife of communication. It's one document that's supposed to fill multiple communication needs. As somebody else said, it's supposed to tell, in our case, the HLC or the accrediting body, this is what we're doing in the course. And this is evidence that we're doing the same thing in every course that we call Econ 202.
But Jim, you're saying the big thing here is that we have all these goals on the front side, but Robin talking about the syllabus at the end of the course, what we actually do in the class, what we actually get accomplished with the students in the room, it's not going to be the same every term because every student is different. And
or
every
even
collection of
in the same term.
Every collection of students is different, right?
That might be the huge, you know, one of the huge unspokens, elephants in the room. Yeah. Actually, I kind of like that idea. Maybe what we need to do is invent a new document, which is the syllabus at the end of the term. It's like, yeah, it's a document of this is what we actually did.
Postmortem is probably not the right term here.
But yeah, but something like that. Yeah. Autopsy is kind of the wrong term too, but
we use that term in software engineering after a project's delivered.
Yeah, yeah, and I would think that the similar kind of thing. But we never, you know, in higher ed, we never look back at what we did. That's why we love failed business models.
Reading Stephen's comments here. Someone has something to say. No?
I have one thing to say, a quick thing. I was just going to say that when Chris said that business about, you know, failed business models and how pedagogy loves failed business models, and then he specifically said, it's like, okay, let's like apply Netflix to course experiences, etc. My brain started moving in that direction, and I was thinking specifically about the Netflix algorithm, you know, and how you're just sort of clicking, and then you end up with all this stuff because you clicked on the certain places. The algorithm is funneling you in specific ways, and you end up not seeing a lot of things that might intrigue you and make you drawn and hopefully make you grow as a human being. And I think this kind of algorithmic funneling that's occurring in so many places due to digitized culture, and you know, it's essentially limiting our ability to grow and learn and connect with those who are different than us, or discover. I guess that's the word too, is this kind of happenstance, serendipitous discovery, which is so much a part of what real learning is. So I kind of really loved what Chris said, you know, and my brain was already in that little corner of algorithmic, we're not discovering, all that stuff was going on, but then we flew by it. So I just wanted to insert that there because I thought it was interesting and an interesting reflection. Yeah.
No, thank you.
I think it's a great reflection, Mia, because in the community college world, we're being force-fed that stuff, and it's called guided pathways for students. And they're actually thinking that this is a good thing, is just take all the choice away from the students so they don't, you know, so that we can ram them through and call it retention.
Yeah, that's really an interesting label, guided pathways. Go ahead, Keisha, sorry.
Oh no, I was just going to say I didn't know if I necessarily agreed with that statement about what was it exactly that we love in academics, the failed business model. I think we've been trained to repurpose technologies for our uses because there aren't people really designing for us because it's not profitable. And so we take what we can get and learn to love it, but it's not necessarily that we love it, is that the reason why we're adapting it. We don't have people who have a strong investment at this time in creating something that's specifically for the purposes of teaching and learning. And I think a lot of us that are at our academics don't necessarily delve into that domain, that so we can even help inform those conversations. And a lot of times we're not even our opinion isn't asked. We're told that this will work for us, and then we are charged with making it work. And so I think a lot of conversations might be held around that, about how do we get into the conversations? What would it take for people to really invest in listening to faculty voices about what it takes to create tools that are really needed for us to deliver our instruction?
Yes. Oh man, indeed, Robin. She won't leave. She said she had to leave as soon as Mia was done. But she won't leave.
How can I leave? You keep saying awesome. But I really do have to go. But I'll hopefully, yeah, this part doesn't go online though, right? This just
we're still live until I turn this off.
You mean everything I said is going?
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding. It's fine.
No, I haven't signed off yet. It's very flux whether we go, how long we go. Hold on, I'm gonna go mute. Keep talking.
I'm just saying goodbye. So
Okay.
Thanks everybody. Brilliant comments, Mia. That stuff too. Great about the algorithms. Okay, bye everyone.
Bye, Robin.
Bye. Stay good, y'all. But even if Ken's bounced off, yeah, go Jim.
Well, I was just going to toss in along the lines of, I really liked Chris's comment about the failed business models, and the reason I was thinking that, and this is not any different from what Akeisha was talking about, is academia is actually my second career in a lot of ways, maybe third. I spent about 25 years as a business strategist in corporate world and consultant, and I spent a lot of time with building strategies and for everything from forest products companies to tech startups, and I ended up having an opportunity at the community college to do strategy development. And I have to tell you that folks just don't think the stuff through. I mean, it really is a fascination with failed business models, not just failed technology, but failed business models. I mean, just the fascination we have in higher ed with how many times do you hear we need to scale this up? Mm-hmm. We don't have scale in higher ed. Mm-hmm. We have scope, which is we have a large number of things, but they're all very, very different. That's a scope problem. And scale is just large volume of identically the same thing. And it never works.
No, not at all. And we need to reinvent education again and again and again and again.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll let you guys have the last word since we are all pushing up against time to go. So.
Well, Stephen, before we sign out, I don't know if he's still there. He's muted and yeah.
I'm still here.
Yeah.
What do you have to add for sign off here, Stephen? You had lots of good comments in the side chat. I tend to copy paste the side chat when I remember and then share it among us, but not publicly.
Oh, you'll remember this time, Ken.
Oh, I've already done it 3 times, so at least I have a partial copy.
Yeah, I'd like to look over it again, and this has been great. I keep coming back to the thought that we are talking about value propositions, and when we get into things like syllabi as contracts, that this is a subset of an exchange between the institution and the student, and between the institution and the faculty. At the small college I work at, it's full of contract instructors. and they don't have a lot of control over syllabi, but they do have a lot of control over what happens in the classroom. So I think there's some issues of communication and of the actual transaction that's happening. How valuable is it in terms of a learning experience? The students are paying money, or their parents are paying money, or the government is loaning them money. So it's all transaction based. We can't get away from that at this point, I don't think.
And when we get to contract instructors, adjuncts, precarity, we are opening up a mammoth can of worms. And a lot of us are feeling the weight of that particular can of worms even now. So yeah, that's great stuff.
Great, thanks for adding that. That's a good way to end here. And I'm going to sign off from DLPI for day 1, session 1, and I will hit the stop broadcast button now. Thank you everybody for joining, especially our new members or new peeps, as Jim likes to call us.